It was quite normal or is normal for the sea in the Lake of Galilee to erupt sometimes into a storm. Quite normal for it to be really calm, and then from nowhere the wind comes and the waves lap up and there is a storm. So it's really interesting that the disciples are fearful. And it shows just how dangerous this storm is. They would have known the lake. Some of them we know are fishermen. And so they would have regularly been out on that lake. And so it must have surprised them when this storm came up. They didn't know what to do. They were frightened. Other Gospels go more into that sense of fear that they have. This is real danger that they are facing. And they're in the boat, and Jesus is asleep. It's really interesting that they wake him up. And I was pondering this. What did they think Jesus was going to do? Because later they're amazed at what he does do. So why did they wake him up? They must have realized something about who Jesus is. Their journey of the 3 years of walking with Jesus is learning about who Jesus is. Jesus as God the Son. Jesus as God the Mighty One. That is who Jesus is. And that is what they're beginning to understand. So in this gospel, they've already seen Jesus perform quite a significant number of healings, restoring people to health. So they've seen something of his power. They've heard his teaching, his words. They've seen what he's like with different people. And so their instinct is to wake him up because here's somebody that can do something. And Jesus wakes. And he speaks to the wind and to the waves, and they calm. And Jesus turns to them and says, "Where is your faith?" And the disciples question to themselves, "Who is this man? Even the waves and the winds obey him." And it's such a wonderful story because it's one that speaks of who Jesus is, the mighty one. But it also speaks of the humanity of the disciples in trying to understand what this means. Who is this man? Who is God? And isn't that a question we ask ourselves so many times? Who is God? Do I really trust in who I believe in my head he is? When danger is in front of me, do I believe that he is the mighty one? So I chose this passage. I think it's a wonderful series that you're looking at, the names of Jesus. Mighty God. Right from the very beginning, Jesus has been with God the Father. Nothing has been made that Jesus has not been part of. And so it's not a surprise that he is able to rebuke the wind and the waves and they cease. That word rebuke, we think of Jesus being angry. That's how we use that word. Jesus is angry with the waves and so they cease. But another way of understanding that word is much different. It's more like, hush. It's not the time. Calm down. Like a parent speaking to a child who's got a little bit overexcited. Shh. Not now. And I love that intimate relationship that Jesus has with the created world. We're going to sing a song later. Dan asked if I wanted to choose a particular song, and I chose it as well, because there's a phrase in it that every time I sing it strikes me. The waves and wind still know his name. The waves and wind still know his name. From the beginning of creation, Jesus is there in the midst of the created order. And there on the lake, the wind and the waves know his name. Shh. Not yet. Not now. Calm down. It's not a wonder the disciples are a bit amazed. Who is this man? And Jesus is saying to them, where is your faith? He's trying to encourage their faith. This is who I am. I've come to show you who I am. All these prophecies of old have pointed to who I am going to be. But now let me show you, face to face, that I am God, the mighty one. And that means that I have this relationship with nature. The mighty one who created everything that we know around us. And yet there's an intimacy in that as well. Dan, you prayed earlier about how Jesus shows his might. And he is the mighty one. And yet he shows it in being born in Bethlehem as a vulnerable baby and as dying on a cross. That's not the might that we think of in our culture and in our society. People who are mighty use their power and often abuse it. Here we have Jesus, so united and integrated and involved in the creation. That intimate relationship is just part of who he is. He has the power to cease the wind and the waves. And yet he shows that power to us through vulnerability. And that's just such an interesting paradox, isn't it? Might and power and intimacy and vulnerability being two sides of who he is. And so the disciples are asking that question, who is this man? And I think I ask that question time and time again. Because when faced with danger, I might turn to Jesus, but do I truly expect him to be the mighty one that I praise in my worship? That's when the doubts come, that's when the fears come. And they come for a whole lot of different reasons. Sometimes we just cannot believe that God is as mighty as he is. Does he have the power to change this situation? But often the harder question is, will he change this? Jesus chose to still the wind and the waves. And yet if he hadn't, the storm would have continued. And perhaps they would have been thrown out of the boat. Perhaps there would have been a much more tragic ending. That bit's complex. Because we can know what God can do, what Jesus can do. And yet we also know that he doesn't always intervene in that way. And I wonder whether that is why we sometimes limit our understanding of God, of Jesus as the mighty one. Mighty God. Because actually it's a bit difficult to actually comprehend why there but not here. But sometimes we actually feel unworthy of it too. God's only there for those who are really good, for those who preach, for those who pray, for those who are kind to their neighbors and never say a bad word. But that's not me, is it? I let God down so many times, so why would he be interested in me? And often we limit our understanding of who God is by our own sense of unworthiness. And Jesus is saying, I love you. I love you for who you are. And I want to enfold you and wrap you up in everything that I have for you. And it's often our own barriers that come in the way. As we read through Scripture, there are so many examples of Jesus, the mighty one. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. We're going to hear that several times over Christmas. All things came into being through him, and without him, not one thing came into being. That is Jesus. That is the mighty God. And we need to remember that. That's why we need to go through our passages time and time again, to let them sink deeper and deeper every single time we read them. What has come into being in him was life. And the life was the light of all people. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not overcome it. It's felt really dark recently, hasn't it? As we look back, we can put a bit of a, stiff upper lip, British stiff upper lip on it and say, oh, the pandemic, it's been okay, we've got through it. But it's been dark. We never, ever believed we would be in this situation. And yet, God is still God. God is still mighty. God still reaches out in love to each and every one of us. And what we proclaim with our mouth, what we know in our head, we have to let sink deeper, deeper, and deeper into our hearts. The truth is, Jesus is the mighty God. Every single day of my life. But how I feel that, how I respond to that, and how I believe that will change from day to day. But it isn't all doom and gloom, because Jesus wants us to begin to understand more and more. Again, that sentence that he says, "Where is your faith?" could feel a bit like the rebuke. Come on, you haven't got enough faith. How many times have you said that to yourself? You haven't got enough faith. I think what Jesus is saying, I know you haven't got enough faith and I want to help you. Trust me. Step out and believe. Think of Peter jumping out of the boat to walk on the water. He was desperate to try and grab everything that Jesus had for him. Didn't always quite get it right. But Jesus wants us to have faith. And he wants us to know him as the living God, the mighty one, the creator of heaven and earth, who flung stars into space. So how do we hold that with what's going on in here? Worship is one way. When we worship, we proclaim the truths of who God is. We proclaim the knowledge of who Jesus is. And we call upon the Spirit to make what we sing with our lips real in our hearts. So that we can hold on to the fears of the world with the knowledge of who God is. That we can live with doubt, but also see glimmers of hope. The retreat I was on last week, the retreat leader spoke about Terry Waite, who was imprisoned for 3 years in solitary confinement in complete darkness. Who can cope with that? Unbelievable. And what kept him going was his knowledge of Jesus, was the words of the services that he had, used all his life. The words came back. But the woman was telling us another story that she'd heard from him. The cell he was in complete darkness. The windows had been blocked out. I mean, the inhumanity of that is phenomenal. But once a day, there was a tiny gap in the shutters that they'd put on the window. And the smallest stream of light came in for a couple of minutes every day. And that gave him hope. The tiniest glimmer of light. Because Jesus is the light. And he breaks through the darkness. And we can know that in the most horrific of situations. We can know that Jesus is the mighty one who is with us. That God, Jesus, Spirit, there at the beginning, knowing us intimately, wrapping us into his arms and saying, come. Come and find out who I am. Come and know everything about me. The 50 names, we'll never understand those on earth. But let's begin to try. Let's begin to explore. Let's begin to let Jesus reveal himself to us. Jesus revealed himself to the disciples. And even at the end, the companions on the road to Emmaus still hadn't got it. And Jesus drew alongside them and showed them who he was. And he wants to do that to each and every one of us. He wants us to know him. So that in those difficult times, in those times when we need to know that he is the mighty one, It's a reality in our heart as much as in our head, as much as in the words we say and sing. Jesus, the mighty one. The waves and wind still know his name. We know his name. He knows our name. And he says, come. Come and let me show myself to you, that you might have faith. Amen.